Police officer mocks black woman in court, unaware she's a top NSA operative. The court is stunned. You've got to be kidding me. Officer Robert Keller slammed the file shut, rolling his eyes. Another so-called victim fighting a ticket, another waste of his time. Or so he thought. What he didn't know was that the woman standing across from him wasn't just another defendant. She wasn't here to argue over a broken taillight. She was here to expose something far bigger, a corruption ring buried deep within the system. And today, in this very courtroom, his entire world was about to crumble. 8 o'clock in the morning, in the heart of downtown San Diego, the Edward J. Schwartz U.S. Courthouse vibrated with the purposeful energy of lawyers, plaintiffs, defendants, and curious onlookers. The marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, and the faint scent of disinfectant clung to the air. Rows of benches, reminiscent of pews in a grand cathedral of justice, were rapidly filling with people awaiting their time before the court. Amid the usual hustle, Elena Morrow stepped through the entrance. She was tall, lean, and exuded a sense of calm that belied her average black suit and unassuming black heels. Her skin glowed with an understated confidence, and her hair, worn in a neat twist, reflected early morning sunlight shining through high windows. Elena's expression was perfectly composed, her posture impeccable. Clutched in her right hand was a simple leather binder containing a few documents: traffic citations, a vehicle inspection form, and legal notes. To any casual observer, Elena appeared to be just another defendant in a minor traffic dispute. The docket indicated her case involved a broken tail light, an out-of-date registration sticker, and supposedly some resistance to a police officer's commands, a run-of-the-mill scenario that filled the daily court schedule. Yet, if one knew Elena's true identity, that impression would be laughable. Behind the facade of an everyday citizen was a top operative for the National Security Agency. With training in cryptography, counterintelligence, and infiltration tactics, Elena Morrow had served at Fort Meade for nearly a decade, working on high-stakes digital intelligence operations before shifting to more field-oriented assignments. No one in this courthouse, at least not openly, suspected that Elena had spent her career unraveling terrorist networks, investigating complex espionage operations, and neutralizing national security threats. Today, she was after something altogether different, a ring of local corruption that might extend from one crooked cop all the way to politicians, business owners, and criminals with deep pockets. As she waited in line to pass through the security checkpoint, Elena took a subtle glance across the foyer. Her target soon emerged, a tall, broad-shouldered police officer wearing a pressed uniform and sporting a mustache that looked like it was trimmed with mathematical precision. Officer Robert Keller. She had studied his face in internal files and high-resolution surveillance images. She recognized his gait, the proud way he tilted his chin, and the faint hint of a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his lips. According to Elena's classified briefing, Keller was suspected of falsifying reports, tipping off organized crime figures about pending raids, and orchestrating pretext stops that disproportionately targeted Black and Latino drivers. But every formal complaint had either vanished or been dismissed, thanks to a labyrinthine network of departmental politics and Keller's father's old connections in city government. The moment Elena reached the metal detector, she placed her binder in a plastic tray, watched as the guard checked it, and then casually strolled through without any issue. She collected her belongings, thanked the guard politely, and moved into the main atrium, just another face in the crowd. Officer Keller, several yards away, was deep in conversation with a court security officer, gesturing animatedly as though retelling some heroic tale. Elena paused at a distance, scanning the corridor leading to the assigned courtroom. She had mapped the entire building layout days ago. She knew which side hallways had fewer cameras, which stairwells were seldom used, and how each courtroom was arranged. Even a minor detail, like the location of the judge's bench relative to the jury box, might prove crucial if things took a dangerous turn. A quick vibration from her phone signaled a text message. "Eyes on you from second floor. All set." That was her partner for this operation, an NSA field agent named Ethan Drake, who was dressed like a paralegal or clerk. He'd surveil Keller's interactions from above, ready to jump in if Elena needed immediate backup. The plan was for Elena to play her role as the naive defendant, draw Keller out, and gather enough public evidence to trigger a formal internal investigation. But Elena also suspected that once Keller felt cornered, he might reveal bigger players in this corruption ring. She typed a quick response, just a single letter, R for Roger, and slipped her phone back into her pocket. Her heart pounded with excitement laced with adrenaline, but her expression remained neutral. By the time she reached courtroom 7C, Elena felt the same calm, methodical focus that had carried her through so many dangerous missions abroad. At exactly 8:45 a.m., Elena slid into the last row of the public seating, crossing her legs and setting her leather binder on her lap. She glanced at the digital docket near the judge's bench, confirming that her case would be called around 9:30. Officer Keller was scheduled to testify. He would likely speak about how Elena had allegedly refused to hand over her license and had been disrespectful during the traffic stop. Elena had heard from official channels that Keller was known for mocking drivers, especially black women whom he saw as easy targets. The question now was how openly he would reveal that side of himself in a courtroom. Unbeknownst to Keller, Elena was not merely fighting a petty citation. She carried years of experience in exposing criminals far more sophisticated and ruthless than one municipal cop. Today, she intended to systematically dismantle his facade, draw out his arrogance, and plant the seeds for his eventual downfall. Only Elena knew that the court drama was just act one of a much larger play. Officer Robert Keller prided himself on being the center of attention. In uniform, he cast an imposing figure, 6'2" with broad shoulders and an air of self-assured power. He spent every morning regaling colleagues with exaggerated stories of his policing triumphs, painting himself as a fearless enforcer of the law. Underneath that facade, however, lay a complicated and ethically dubious history. His personnel file showed a mix of commendations for bravery and repeated allegations of misconduct. Complaints from drivers, mostly from minority communities, stated that he used racially charged language, performed unjustified searches, or escalated routine traffic stops into fraught confrontations. Internal Affairs had launched multiple inquiries, but each time the case either dissolved for lack of evidence or was quietly settled out of court. Rumor in the station halls was that Keller had powerful friends among local politicians, thanks to his father's tenure as a deputy mayor decades earlier. Standing by the corridor, Officer Keller checked his watch. 8:48 a.m. He liked to arrive early to the courthouse so he could banter with security staff and lawyers, flaunting a casual arrogance. Today's hearing was about a mouthy woman who had dared to question him during a late-night traffic stop. Keller often singled out such individuals for citations or even arrests, believing that any pushback against his authority deserved swift punishment. In his mind, Elena Morrow was just another troublemaker who needed to be taught a lesson in the legal system. Spotting Elena across the foyer briefly, he recognized her from the night he stopped her car. She had the same self-assured posture, the same calm eyes that had irked him during the traffic stop. Unaccustomed to being challenged, Keller felt a twinge of annoyance at the memory. She had dared to ask why she needed to step out of the car and had demanded to see his probable cause. He'd ended up writing her a citation that included an allegation of noncompliance, fully expecting that she'd either pay a fine or lose the case outright. But here she was, apparently ready to fight back in court. Keller resolved to humiliate her publicly. He downed the last of his coffee and tossed the cup into a nearby trash can, missing by a good 6 inches. Without even glancing to see if it landed, he strolled toward courtroom 7C. The way he carried himself, chin high, hands clasped behind his back, suggested a man convinced of his own invincibility. No dashcam footage or contradictory witness, he believed, could stand against his word. He was confident the judge would side with him, a veteran officer. After all, hadn't it always worked in his favor? Elena's case was eventually called, and she rose to approach the defendant's podium. Officer Keller took his place on the opposite side, accompanied by a junior prosecutor assigned to the municipal court. Judge Victoria Holt, a middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair, presided over the hearing. Her reputation was one of strict fairness, and she was known to take no nonsense from either side. All rise, the bailiff announced, prompting everyone to stand momentarily. The judge seated herself and nodded for both parties to proceed. The prosecutor spoke first, reading the city's case. Elena Morrow was charged with operating a vehicle with a broken tail light, failing to provide identification promptly when asked by a police officer, and resisting an officer's instructions during a traffic stop. A trifecta of misdemeanor-level infractions that could result in fines or even a short jail sentence in extreme cases. Elena listened quietly, her face betraying neither worry nor anger. Officer Keller was called upon to recount his version of events. He stepped forward, addressing the court. On the night in question, he began, I observed Ms. Morrow's car with a visibly broken tail light. When I pulled her over, she refused to roll down her window fully. Upon finally rolling it down, she refused to hand over her license or registration. She was confrontational, Your Honor, and kept asking why she was stopped despite my repeated explanations. He exhaled, a performance of feigned exasperation. Ultimately, I had to request backup. She did eventually produce her license, but the entire stop was far more difficult than it needed to be due to her behavior. Elena looked on with measured calm, waiting for her turn. She knew Keller had intentionally omitted key facts, that she had politely asked the reason for being pulled over, that he didn't answer, that he banged the rear of her car with his flashlight, possibly damaging the tail light on purpose, and that he sneered at her inquiries about probable cause. He also conveniently neglected to mention his condescending references to people like you, which Elena had found deeply telling. When the judge signaled for Elena to respond, she stepped up to a small microphone on the defendant's table. Your Honor, there is more to this situation. I have a signed statement from the mechanic who examined my car immediately after the stop. According to him, there was no evidence of a broken tail light. Moreover, Officer Keller was aggressive from the moment he approached my window, calling me a troublemaker without any basis. She reached into her binder, pulling out the mechanic's report. The bailiff passed it to the judge, who scanned the document with a critical eye. The judge raised her gaze to the prosecutor. Are you aware of this mechanic's statement? The junior prosecutor cleared his throat. We were made aware, Your Honor, but we dispute its validity. It could be that the tail light was malfunctioning intermittently. Also, Ms. Morrow did not fully comply initially. She did not immediately present her license. Elena suppressed a small smile. She knew from training that building a foundation of doubt in a routine hearing could be powerful. She had only begun to peel back the layers. The bigger revelations, like dash cam tampering, were still in her pocket, waiting for the right moment. Judge Holt set the statement aside. Officer Keller, was there dash cam footage from the night of the stop? Keller hesitated. The dash cam malfunctioned, Your Honor. There is no recoverable footage. Elena looked directly at him, her voice clear. I find that very convenient, officer. This seems to happen frequently in your cases, doesn't it? The judge's brow furrowed. Ms. Morrow, I will ask you to stick to the specifics for now. Yes, Your Honor, Elena said with a polite nod. She recognized the need to remain calm and factual. However, she had already sown the initial seed that Keller's word was not inherently bulletproof. She also knew Keller's dash cam mysteriously failed on multiple occasions, according to internal records she had unearthed. For now, she would let the tension simmer. Judge Holt glanced at the clock. Given the conflicting reports, I will set this matter for a continued hearing. Officer Keller, please ensure your department provides any relevant maintenance logs or digital files regarding your vehicle's dash cam by the next court date. Ms. Morrow, you may gather your evidence or witness statements. We'll resolve the matter then. Understood, Elena replied, her voice measured. She met Keller's stare briefly. He glared back, an expression that radiated hostility. The hearing concluded moments later with a bang of the judge's gavel, and Elena returned to her seat. Another wave of cases began, so Elena quietly gathered her things and headed into the corridor. As she passed Keller, he muttered under his breath, You're wasting your time. I don't lose in this courthouse. Elena paused, turning to face him. We'll see, officer. She kept her tone polite, but a subtle challenge shimmered beneath. Keller snorted, then sauntered away. Elena watched him go, feeling an undercurrent of determination. She had accomplished her initial objective, establishing the first crack in Keller's credibility. Now she would move methodically to enlarge that crack until the entire structure of his misconduct collapsed. After leaving the courtroom, Elena stepped out into the crisp mid-morning air. The city hummed with activity. Traffic pulsed through the streets, and pedestrians flowed along sidewalks. She walked calmly to a small cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse, scanning every reflection in the shop windows to make sure she wasn't followed. Years of field experience made these habits second nature. Inside the cafe, Elena spotted Agent Ethan Drake seated near the back. He wore an unremarkable gray suit, the kind that merged into any office crowd. A half-empty cup of coffee sat on the small circular table. She joined him quietly, placing her binder on the tabletop. "Anything unusual?" Drake asked under his breath, his lips barely moving. Elena shook her head, scanning the cafe for eavesdroppers. "He's suspicious, but not suspicious enough yet. I think he believes I'm just a headstrong woman trying to fight a losing ticket." Drake sipped his coffee. "You played it well in there. If we push him too hard too soon, he'll close ranks or tip off the bigger fish." "I know." Elena folded her hands. "But the next hearing is in about a week. By then, I want to have enough evidence to corner him publicly. Once we do, he might flip on the broader ring." Drake tapped the table lightly. "We've been digging. Early signs show Keller likely shares intel with a local gang that deals in narcotics and illegal firearms. They pay him to sabotage investigations and tip them off about raids. We suspect there are city officials involved too, like the old circle around Keller's father." Elena nodded. She had read the partial intelligence briefs. "This is bigger than I expected," she admitted. "But the approach remains the same. I gather evidence under my civilian defendant guise. We push for departmental records, and we see if Keller panics. Once he does, we trace the lines upward." Drake leaned forward. "Just be cautious. If Keller smells a rat, he could get violent. We both know how impulsive men like him can be when they feel cornered." Elena's mind flitted to her array of self-defense tactics and the small sidearm she had stashed in a locked compartment of her car. "I can handle myself," she said softly, meeting Drake's gaze. "But yes, I'll be careful. In the meantime, can you follow the money trail through those partial bank records we found?" He nodded. "Already on it. We also have a contact in the police department's IT division who might discreetly confirm if dash cam footage was ever recorded on Keller's night shifts. The official line is that it malfunctioned, but we suspect tampering." "Exactly," Elena said, recalling how many times Keller's dash cam had broken when people alleged misconduct. "Let's reconvene in a couple of days with updates." Drake agreed, and Elena rose, giving him a casual nod. She left the cafe, binder in hand, fully aware that each step brought her closer to a confrontation with Keller's carefully protected world. She also understood that once you tug at a corruption thread, the entire tapestry can unravel violently. But Elena was committed. She'd never walked away from a mission before, and she wasn't about to start now. That same afternoon, Officer Keller paced the cramped break room at his police precinct, cell phone pressed to his ear. Through a grimy window, he could see patrol cars come and go. His frustration crackled in his voice. "Look, I'm telling you," Keller said in a low tone. "This woman she's pushing it. She's got some nerve demanding those dashcam logs." A pause, then he continued. "Yeah, I know I told the judge it malfunctioned, but I can't produce what doesn't exist, right? No, I don't think she has a lawyer. She's representing herself. Something's off, though. She's too calm, too prepared." He flicked a glance toward the hallway, making sure no one was listening. "Maybe I need your help to make sure certain records stay unavailable. I mean, we can't let this blow up, right? I'll keep you posted." Ending the call, Keller exhaled, forcing himself to appear casual as a fellow officer passed by. A flicker of uncertainty gnawed at him. He reminded himself that he'd handled bigger challenges in the past. Complaints, internal affairs sniffing around. He always emerged unscathed, thanks to connections behind the scenes. This Elena Morrow might be more persistent than most, but she was still just a lone defendant. He could handle her. He had to. Later that day, Elena sat in her modest apartment, which she'd rented under her civilian alias in downtown San Diego. She booted up a secure laptop, the operating system heavily encrypted. She logged onto a clandestine NSA server, uploading a short summary of the day's events for her superiors at Fort Meade. Nothing too revealing, just a status report. Once the report was filed, Elena opened a second program to communicate with a close ally in the NSA's cyber division. The conversation was short but informative. Word was that some local law enforcement servers showed signs of unauthorized access. Possibly someone was tampering with or deleting digital evidence at the precinct. Elena jotted down a note. Need official subpoena for server logs if feasible. Exiting the secure environment, Elena leaned back in her chair, gazing at the city lights through her window. Each glimmering skyscraper seemed to hold a secret. She felt that old familiar pulse of excitement, like she was on the brink of unearthing a far-reaching conspiracy. But she also sensed the risk. Focus, she told herself, reviewing her mental checklist. She needed to press in court for departmental documents, including those so-called malfunction reports for the dashcam. She needed to cross-check Keller's schedule with known drug busts that went sideways. And she needed to keep up the role of being merely a determined civilian. Even the slightest slip, like using advanced legal arguments or brandishing knowledge she shouldn't have, could tip Keller off that she wasn't who she claimed to be. Yet, Elena relished the challenge. Undercover work demanded nuance, a delicate dance between truth and performance. She could hold her own in that dance. Let Keller keep mocking her. She'd seen far more dangerous threats in war zones. She would wait for the precise moment, then strike. For days later, Elena concluded a morning jog through her neighborhood. She wore athletic leggings, running shoes, and a light jacket. As she approached her parked sedan, she noticed something off. The driver's side mirror hung at a strange angle, as if forcibly yanked. Then she spotted slash marks on the rear tires. A jolt of anger and unease coursed through her. Looking around, Elena saw no obvious witnesses or cameras. This was deliberate. Someone had vandalized her vehicle, likely as an intimidation tactic. She crouched to examine the tire slashes. Clean, precise cuts, not random vandalism by a bored teenager. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. Elena answered cautiously. "Hello." A muffled voice spoke. "Next time, it'll be more than your tires." The line went dead. Elena frowned, adrenaline surging. She immediately scanned her surroundings, but the street was mostly empty. She quickly locked her phone and texted Agent Drake. "Car vandalized. Possible threat. Taking precautions." She was no stranger to intimidation. In past missions, she'd faced hostile groups who tried everything from phone threats to planting explosive devices. But this was a domestic scenario with a single corrupt cop and his associates. Even so, Elena refused to be rattled. "They want me scared," she thought. "They're trying to make me back down." She would respond by digging deeper, doubling her efforts. When dealing with bullies, Elena believed, you either stand your ground or you let them trample you. She'd stand her ground. The next day, Elena filed a formal motion with the court to expand discovery, referencing the suspicious pattern of missing dashcam footage. She cited the vehicle maintenance logs that Judge Holt had requested, plus the partial server data that implied a manual deletion. The motion was crisp, direct, and couched in the language of a determined citizen rather than a seasoned intelligence operative. 2 days later, 5 days before the scheduled hearing, Elena received notice that the judge had reviewed her motion and decided to allow it. A subpoena was issued, compelling the San Diego Police Department to turn over all dashcam-related files for Keller's patrol unit for the past 6 months. Elena smiled as she read the court order. This was precisely the wedge she needed. Simultaneously, Elena got a text from Drake. "DA's office just learned about your subpoena. They're not happy. Expect pushback." Elena pocketed her phone. She anticipated that the district attorney might try to protect Keller or at least avoid public embarrassment for the city. But a subpoena couldn't be ignored easily. That evening, Elena spoke with a contact at the NSA's Fort Meade. The conversation was short, confirming that they had all the legal basis to keep pushing. The agency's stance: let Elena continue the infiltration but remain safe. If local corruption threatened to sabotage the case, the NSA might intervene more overtly. Elena preferred to keep the operation low profile, though, because an official NSA presence could spook the conspirators into hiding. A day later, Elena arrived at the police station's records division, a dingy office in the basement level filled with filing cabinets, old computers, and the stale smell of dust. Clutching her official subpoena, Elena presented it to a clerk named Kevin Silva, a lanky young man with curly hair who seemed perpetually nervous. "I'm here to inspect any and all dashcam storage logs for Officer Robert Keller's unit," Elena said politely, handing him the paperwork. Silva scanned it, brow wrinkling. "Yes, ma'am. We got a heads up about this, but it might take a while to gather everything. I'll escort you to the viewing room." The viewing room turned out to be a small office with a single wooden table, fluorescent lights that flickered occasionally, and a dusty monitor for reviewing digital files. Silva rummaged through boxes stacked along a wall. Elena made small talk, noticing his agitation. "Busy day?" she asked. Silva shrugged, glancing at the door. "Something like that. I don't want to get in trouble, but if you're looking into Officer Keller, just be careful." Elena tilted her head. "You've heard stories?" Silva hesitated. "I don't want to say too much, but my cousin got pulled over by him once. It was rough." His eyes flickered with concern. A lot of folks in here don't trust him, but he's got friends in high places. Elena gave a sympathetic nod, but she didn't press the issue. Silva booted up an old computer connected to the department server. After entering a series of passwords, he opened the folder for Keller's dash cam records. Many entries were labeled, corrupted, cannot open. Others had normal timestamps and file sizes. Court order says you can examine them, Silva explained, stepping back. But you can't copy or download anything without higher authorization. Elena nodded, pulling on a pair of headphones. Over the next few hours, she painstakingly clicked through each available video, noting their date stamps, lengths, and content. Some displayed mundane traffic stops, drivers who meekly handed over their licenses. Others showed Keller's demeanor shift from calm to aggressive in seconds. Elena felt her chest tighten, watching his harsh tone when dealing with drivers of color. Still, the videos Elena most wanted, the ones from the night Keller stopped her, showed only error messages or short, blacked-out clips. She calmly took notes, screenshotting metadata where permissible under the subpoena. She also quietly recognized that the official system might have been scrubbed. The partial logs provided by Agent Drake suggested someone carefully targeted certain files. Elena rechecked every possibility, concluding that indeed her specific date was missing from the official record. By the time Elena finished, her notepad was filled with references to missing timestamps and suspicious, corrupt labels. She thanked Silva politely and departed. Though she had no direct proof yet, Elena felt the tension coiling. The pattern of missing files was too deliberate. She planned to present this in court, forcing Keller to explain why so many malfunctions happened on nights that generated civilian complaints. Stepping out into the late afternoon, Elena caught a glimpse of Keller across the street, leaning against his patrol car. He stared directly at her, making no move to hide his hostility. She stared back calmly. Eventually, he pushed off from the car and drove away. Elena quietly resolved to watch her back closely. Men like Keller rarely gave up power without a fight. 2 nights before the court hearing, Elena received a cryptic phone call on her personal line. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Ms. Morrow, a tense, whispery voice asked. Speaking, Elena replied, her senses instantly on alert. I work in the department, the voice continued. I've seen Keller's name on some shady documents. I heard you were the one challenging him in court. Elena kept her voice steady, drawing upon her training. May I ask who you are? A hesitation. Call me a friend. I don't want to get fired, or worse. Keller's not just a loose cannon. He's part of a group that manipulates evidence and extorts local businesses. They have city officials in their pocket. I can't talk more on an open line, but I have documents that prove it. Elena's pulse quickened. This was exactly the kind of break she had hoped for. I'd like to see these documents, she said calmly. When and where? Tomorrow night. The old parking garage on 3rd and Willow. Level 3, far corner. Come alone. If I see anyone else, I'm gone. The line went dead. Elena sat back in her chair, phone in hand. A clandestine meeting in a deserted garage. It felt like classic espionage. She typed a quick text to Agent Drake. Anonymous tipster meeting tomorrow 9 p.m. 3rd and Willow. Need backup in the shadows. Drake confirmed. Elena knew it could be a trap, orchestrated by Keller or his associates. But she also knew that real whistleblowers often took desperate risks. She'd go prepared for either scenario. The next evening, Elena drove to the intersection of 3rd and Willow. It was a deserted district of old warehouses and closed storefronts. The parking garage was a derelict concrete structure with flickering overhead lamps casting ghostly light. 9 p.m. felt even darker in that lonely urban canyon. Wearing a simple black jacket and flat shoes, Elena stepped out of her car on level 2 and climbed a flight of stairs to level 3, each footstep echoing. She clutched a small flashlight, her concealed sidearm holstered at her waist. Agent Drake was somewhere below, hidden in a vantage point with line of sight to Elena's location. She reached the far corner, her ears straining for the slightest sound. A figure emerged from behind a pillar, the hood of a sweatshirt pulled low over the face. Ms. Morrow, the person said in a hushed tone, glancing around. Did you come alone? Elena nodded. Yes, she lied, her posture relaxed but ready. You said you had documents? The figure held out a manila envelope. Elena stepped forward and took it cautiously. She opened it enough to see photocopies of what appeared to be deposit slips, wire transfer confirmations, and internal memos referencing cooperative officers, including a name spelled out. Keller, where did you get these? Elena asked. I do admin stuff in the property and evidence section. I recognized Keller's name on these suspicious transactions. They pay him, and sometimes he passes on intel about police schedules. The hooded figure paused, voice quivering. I was too scared to go to IA. You know how the department can be. Elena's mind whirled, scanning the documents. They looked legitimate, detailing payments from a shell corporation into a bank account with partial references to Keller. This is dangerous for you, she acknowledged. But it could help expose everything. The figure nodded. Just promise me, if you blow this open, you won't reveal my name. I need to stay alive. Before Elena could respond, the squeal of tires echoed through the garage. Headlights flared across the walls. A dark SUV careened onto level 3, engine roaring. The tipster cursed and bolted deeper into the shadows. Elena ducked behind a concrete pillar, the manila envelope pressed against her chest. Her phone vibrated with a text from Drake. SUV plate partial match to known associates of Keller. The SUV screeched to a halt, and two men jumped out, shining flashlights. Elena steadied her breathing. She peered around the pillar, catching a glimpse of a tall man scanning the area. Another voice barked, "Find them." Elena recognized the staccato threat in the man's tone. These were enforcers, possibly gang members or Keller's hired help. She considered her weapon, but her training told her not to engage unless absolutely necessary. She wanted to see if they'd find the tipster or if Drake could intervene first. The men fanned out, stepping cautiously between parked cars. One called, "We know someone's here. Show yourself." Elena stayed motionless, scanning for a route to escape or defend. Her phone vibrated again, moving to flank them. "Stay low." A flash of movement told Elena that Drake was on the move. She heard a quick shuffle, then a muffled cry as one of the men was tackled to the ground. The second man spun around, shining his flashlight wildly. Elena seized the moment to step out from her hiding spot and level her sidearm in a stable stance. "Drop it," she shouted, seeing the man reaching into his jacket. "Now." He froze, stared at Elena, then slowly raised his hands. Drake emerged from behind, pinning the first man. The entire confrontation took less than a minute, but the tipster had vanished in the chaos, presumably fleeing down a back stairwell. Elena quickly pocketed the manila envelope. Approaching the second man, Elena kept her weapon trained while Drake retrieved zip ties from his own belt. The man glared at Elena with a mixture of fear and hate. "You have no idea what you're doing," he growled. Elena's face remained impassive. "I know exactly what I'm doing. You're trespassing on private property, assaulting people. Maybe you work for Keller, or maybe not, but you're done for tonight." They left the two men bound. Drake called the local cops anonymously, reporting suspicious individuals in the parking garage. Elena slipped away into the stairwell, making sure no trace of her presence was left behind. Safe in her car, Elena examined the manila envelope again. The documents might be the missing puzzle piece, financial proof linking Keller to off-the-books payments. She felt a surge of gratitude to the unknown tipster and hoped they remained safe. She also knew the next few days would be critical. If Keller realized Elena had this level of proof, he could become even more dangerous. But Elena had one advantage, the element of surprise, still mostly intact. Keller had no idea she was more than a persistent defendant. She was, in fact, an NSA operative with a network of allies ready to blow his corruption ring wide open. The day of the hearing arrived. Elena Morrow walked into courtroom 7C with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years dismantling criminal enterprises. She wore a crisp blazer over a white blouse, her hair in a modest bun. In her hands was a neatly organized folder, the final compilation of her evidence so far. Seated at the plaintiff's table, Officer Keller exchanged whispers with a new prosecutor this time, a more senior figure named Laura Ashton. Ashton was known for her aggressive style, but Elena didn't flinch. She took a seat on the defendant's side, setting her evidence on the table. Judge Holt entered, robes flowing, and the bailiff called the court to order. After disposing of two minor cases, the judge announced, "Next matter, People versus Morrow. Please approach." Elena rose, stepping to the podium. Ashton and Keller did the same. The judge briefly glanced at Elena, then at Keller. "We've had requests for discovery, subpoenas, allegations of missing dashcam footage. Let's proceed." Laura Ashton opened confidently. "Your Honor, Officer Keller maintains the dash cam malfunctioned at the time of Ms. Morrow's stop. We have no recorded footage to submit. However, Ms. Morrow has cast aspersions that Officer Keller is habitually deleting data. That's a serious accusation with no foundation. Elena kept her face neutral. I disagree, Your Honor. She lifted a small stack of papers from her folder. In the last 6 months, there have been multiple malfunctions specifically tied to officer complaints. We have server logs indicating the files once existed before being corrupted. I filed a motion you approved, and the department was to provide the dashcam system logs. Judge Holt nodded. Officer Keller, did you comply with the order to turn over all relevant system logs? Keller cleared his throat, his posture stiff. We attempted, Your Honor. Some logs are not available. The department's IT staff said they had a server malfunction. This is beyond my personal control. Elena calmly unfolded another sheet. And yet, according to these partial server records, she handed them to the bailiff. The only logs missing are from nights Officer Keller performed stops that led to complaints. That pattern is highly suspicious. In addition, the logs referencing my stop indicate a successful recording for nearly 10 minutes. The official story is that it doesn't exist. So where did it go? Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Keller's face darkened. The judge scrutinized the documents, flipping pages slowly. Laura Ashton tried to intervene. Your Honor, with respect, these so-called server logs might be incomplete or tampered with by an outside party. We can't confirm their authenticity. Elena took a breath, pivoting to her next line of argument. She pulled out the manila envelope documents, carefully selected pages omitting any direct mention of the mysterious tipster. Your Honor, I have additional evidence suggesting that Officer Keller receives off-the-books payments from an entity that benefits from the deletion of certain dashcam footage. I'm prepared to submit these financial records for the court's review. A hush fell over the courtroom. Keller's eyes flared with panic. He leaned toward Ashton, whispering urgently. The judge's eyebrows shot up. Financial records? This is now well beyond a simple traffic violation. Laura Ashton tried to regain control. Your Honor, we object. This is irrelevant to the matter at hand. Ms. Morrow is turning this into a witch hunt. Elena spoke clearly. I'm showing probable motive for the destruction of dashcam footage. If Officer Keller is indeed on someone's payroll, that payroll might want certain interactions hidden. I believe the entire traffic stop was a pretext for intimidation or some other purpose related to these payments. Keller finally erupted, voice tinged with anger. This is outrageous. She's lying to save face. She's pulling random data out of nowhere. Judge Holt banged her gavel once, silencing him. Officer Keller, you will contain your outbursts in my courtroom. She turned her attention to Elena. Ms. Morrow, I'm going to allow a brief evidentiary inquiry. If you can show a legitimate link between these financial records and the missing footage, we'll proceed. But if this is speculation, I will dismiss it. Elena exhaled calmly, nodding. She had come prepared. She laid out how certain sums corresponded with nights that dashcam footage went missing. She showed partial deposit receipts linking a shell corporation to an account with partial identification that matched Keller's name or address. Though not a smoking gun on its own, it formed a compelling puzzle. The judge frowned, flipping through each page with growing concern. Laura Ashton attempted a last stand. Your Honor, this hearing has turned into a fishing expedition. At most, Ms. Morrow has raised peripheral issues. The question remains whether she violated traffic regulations or resisted a lawful stop. We maintain she did. Judge Holt leaned forward, peering at Keller. Officer Keller, do you wish to respond to the suggestion that you have a financial motive to erase dashcam footage? Keller's face flushed, a muscle twitched in his jaw. Your Honor, I have no such motive. This is a smear campaign. I'm a decorated officer, and I've never been charged with misconduct. Charged? No. Elena interjected softly. But multiple complaints lodged, all mysteriously unproven. There's a pattern here, Your Honor. The judge stared at Keller for a long moment, then turned to Elena. Given the severity of these allegations, I'm inclined to recommend a deeper investigation beyond the scope of this traffic hearing. As for the citation itself, Laura Ashton tried again. We asked the court not to dismiss the charges prematurely, but the judge had already made up her mind. She exhaled, as though pained by the complications. I see no credible evidence that Ms. Morrow actually had a broken tail light. The departmental logs are incomplete at best, suspiciously altered at worst. The city's burden of proof is not met. I hereby dismiss all charges against Ms. Morrow. A wave of murmurs passed through the courtroom. Elena forced herself not to smile too broadly. She was relieved, but her real mission was far from done. Officer Keller's fists clenched at his sides. As the judge prepared to move on, Elena said quietly, "Your Honor, if I may, I ask that the court forward these findings to the District Attorney's Office and Internal Affairs for a formal inquiry into Officer Keller's conduct." Judge Holt eyed Elena thoughtfully. "I can certainly recommend it. Whether the DA acts on it is another matter." Laura Ashton's face darkened. This was a public forum, and Elena had effectively forced a recommendation for further investigation. Ashton slammed her brief closed, turning away from Elena in frustration. The gavel struck, and Elena's traffic case was officially over. Court adjourned. Officers in the gallery muttered among themselves, while other defendants looked on with curiosity or admiration. Elena gathered her papers neatly, turning to see Keller staring at her with livid eyes. He stepped forward, ignoring Ashton's attempts to calm him. "This isn't over," Keller spat under his breath, loud enough for Elena to hear. "You're messing with powerful people." Elena held his gaze steadily. She saw the underlying fear behind his bravado. "Then they're welcome to face me," she replied. For an instant, Keller looked like he might lash out physically, but a bailiff was watching closely, so he pivoted, storming out of the courtroom. Elena exhaled, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. Stage 1 of her plan, exposing his misdeeds publicly, was done. Now, Elena would coordinate with Agent Drake and the broader intelligence apparatus. With so much evidence swirling, Keller would be under scrutiny. If he panicked, he might try to destroy more files or reach out to accomplices. Elena intended to track every move. Outside in the corridor, Elena noticed Laura Ashton speaking into her phone, face tight with displeasure, possibly calling someone higher up to warn them about Elena's allegations. Elena walked past, ignoring Ashton's glare. She was done fighting in that courtroom. The real war against local corruption was about to intensify. 2 days after the court hearing, Elena and Agent Drake convened at a secure location arranged by the NSA, a small office above an insurance agency, with tinted windows and minimal foot traffic. They pinned printouts on a corkboard, copies of financial ledgers, screenshots from the dash cam server logs, the tipsters' deposit slips, and media articles. Drake traced lines between them with a marker. "We have half a dozen suspicious transactions to or from accounts tied to Keller. We also see references to 2 local businessmen with rumored organized crime ties. One name surfaces repeatedly, Marcus Thorne. He's a property developer with known political connections." Elena studied the lines. If Thorne's paying Keller for protection, that means local politicians might also be receiving hush money. This is a web. Keller is just the enforcer. Drake nodded. "Which means if we push Keller enough, he might flip on Thorne to save himself. But that also means we risk him skipping town or taking violent action." Elena rubbed her temples. "We should engage the FBI. This is crossing into RICO territory, but I want to keep a handle on it until we're certain. The last thing we need is half-baked federal raids that scare everyone underground." Drake tapped his phone. "We have quiet cooperation from an FBI agent named Dana Riley. She's ready to open a case if we supply hard evidence of interstate transactions. Some of these wire transfers show out-of-state accounts." That was good news. Elena felt a surge of optimism. With the FBI's authority, they could arrest Keller and seize records from Thorne and others in one coordinated strike. "We'll gather a bit more. Keep monitoring Keller's communications if we can. The moment we have enough to ensure convictions, we move." Drake agreed. Elena, after years of infiltration work, knew that timing was everything. Expose a conspiracy too early, and you risk letting key players slip away or destroy evidence. Wait too long, and you risk more violence or infiltration. She was determined to find the perfect moment to drop the hammer. Late on a Monday evening, Elena got a tip from a minor informant in Keller's orbit. Keller planned a secret meeting with Marcus Thorne to discuss the Elena problem. Elena alerted Agent Riley, who arranged a discreet stakeout at an upscale lounge near the marina. Elena herself stayed hidden in a nearby vehicle with tinted windows, scanning the entrance through binoculars. Around 9 p.m., Keller arrived, glancing around nervously before entering. Moments later, Marcus Thorne showed up, wearing a tailored suit and flanked by 2 bodyguards. Over the next hour, Elena listened to the FBI wire inside the lounge, hidden thanks to a cooperative employee. They heard Keller ranting about Elena, how she wouldn't stay in her lane, and how the judge's inquiry threatened them all. Thorne sounded calm, advising Keller to either scare her off or take more permanent measures if necessary. As Elena listened, Her hand tightened around her phone. A final, chilling line from Thorne. "Let me know if you need someone to handle it. We can't afford a leak." That was it. Elena exchanged glances with Drake in the dark car. The FBI team overheard everything. Thorne was actively discussing violence to silence Elena. They had enough for conspiracy charges. Agent Riley gave the green light. Within seconds, plainclothes FBI agents stormed the lounge. Elena watched from across the street, heart pounding, as Keller and Thorne realized too late the trap had sprung. Agents shouted, "FBI, don't move." The well-heeled clientele screamed. Keller, wide-eyed, reached for his phone, only to have it knocked from his hand. Thorne's bodyguards tried to intervene, but the FBI wrestled them down. Amid the chaos, Elena stepped out of her vehicle, crossing the street. She spotted Keller being led out in handcuffs. Their eyes locked. His face went ashen. Elena approached calmly, stopping a few feet away, ignoring the swirl of cameras that some onlookers had whipped out. "Surprised to see me?" she asked softly. Keller's voice shook with rage. You set this all up." Elena folded her arms. "You did that yourself, when you broke the law and threatened me." He tried to lunge, but the FBI agents tightened their grip. "Who the hell are you?" Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out her NSA badge, showing it to him discreetly. "I'm Elena Morrow, National Security Agency. Consider this your official introduction." The look on Keller's face was indescribable, a fusion of betrayal, anger, fear, and disbelief. He spat. "This isn't real. You're just some traffic violator." Elena's lip curled into a small smile. "Not anymore, officer. Not anymore." The FBI shoved him into the back of a waiting SUV. Thorne and his men were similarly carted off in separate vehicles. Sirens wailed, illuminating the marina's calm waters with red and blue strobe lights. Elena stood among the confusion, taking a measured breath. The circle of corruption was finally broken. Keller's arrogance, fueled by ignorance and bigotry, had led to his downfall. In the weeks that followed, Elena gave closed-door testimony to the FBI and federal prosecutors. A grand jury was convened, and indictments rained down on Keller, Thorne, and a host of others named in Elena's documentary evidence. The local news stations captured the story of an overlooked traffic case turning into a massive corruption bust. Some headlines read, "NSA Operative infiltrates San Diego police corruption," though Elena kept her involvement largely confidential. Official statements from the Department of Justice confirmed that Elena's undercover role had been crucial, but offered no deeper details. The city reeled. Public trust in the police department wavered, leading the mayor to call for a thorough house cleaning. The newly motivated district attorney's office, chastened by public outcry, cooperated fully with federal agents to root out anyone connected to Keller's ring. Officer Robert Keller, once a brazen figure who mocked Elena in open court, now faced a raft of federal charges: conspiracy, evidence tampering, racketeering, civil rights violations. He underwent multiple interviews, eventually naming other complicit officers and politicians in a futile effort to reduce his sentence. The entire network he had relied upon for protection crumbled, each piece turning on the other in a desperate bid for leniency. Several months later, Elena found herself back at Fort Meade in Maryland, seated in a sleek conference room within the NSA headquarters. Tall windows overlooked a maze of modern buildings and secure perimeters. The hum of air conditioning and distant chatter of analysts formed a soothing backdrop. Across the table sat Director Linda Hayes, a poised woman in her 50s dressed in a dark suit. She smiled as she reviewed the final after-action report Elena had submitted. "Agent Morrow," Director Hayes said, "you completed Operation Thoroughfare with exemplary skill. The local corruption ring's downfall, the arrests, and the subsequent reforms. This is a significant success story, not just for the NSA, but for interagency cooperation." Elena inclined her head. "Thank you, Director. We had strong support from the FBI and, quietly, from some honest people within the San Diego PD. It was a team effort." Director Hayes gestured at the thick file. "Still, you orchestrated the infiltration. You endured personal threats, overcame intimidation, and leveraged your cover brilliantly. This entire operation started as a minor traffic citation that you turned into a major corruption bust." Elena allowed herself a small grin. "Officer Keller gave me just enough rope by underestimating me. He thought I was powerless because I was a black woman standing alone in court. That was all I needed." Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "Arrogance can be a blindfold. Well, Elena, we're proud. The DOJ has recognized your contribution, and you can expect a commendation. As for your next assignment, we have some possibilities overseas, or you could remain stateside for a while. Elena considered. Part of her longed to return to more global missions, but she also felt a sense of gratification seeing real change happen at home. I'll review the options, she said at last, and let you know. They spoke for a few more minutes about logistics, debriefing protocols, and Elena's well-deserved downtime. As the meeting ended, Elena rose from her chair, shook Director Hayes' hand, and left the conference room. She walked down a polished corridor, feeling the subtle empowerment of returning to her everyday environment, an NSA operative among many. But she carried fresh memories of that San Diego courtroom, where a single, arrogant officer had laughed at her, thinking she was just another defendant who could be intimidated or silenced. He had no idea. Smiling faintly, Elena exited the building into the crisp Maryland air. There was always another mission on the horizon, another pocket of corruption or threat to national security. Yet, she felt a rare sense of closure. She had proven once again that even the mightiest conspiracies could crumble under the determination of those seeking truth, and that the law, when wielded by the right hands, could be a powerful weapon for justice.